All right, 21 Things crew. So, hey, you know what? I need to set something up. I forgot to do my little my little lower third here. I am, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan. I'm one of the instructors here at the 21 Things Discovery module, and this is our first webinar. No one's here, so for those of you who are watching this as a video, I'll explain what it is you need to do here in a little bit. Right now, I'm just talking to myself, and I'm sure that's because I'm looking outside, and it's 60 degrees and sunny, which in Michigan hasn't happened for a long, long time. So, if you're outside and doing other things, I can't say that I blame you. But anyways, what we're going to do here today is just talk a little bit about the application of a lot of things that you guys have been doing in your 21 Things modules. So far, right now you should have done things 1 through 3. Now, thing 1 was about the blended classroom. Oh, I've got somebody here. Hey, how's it going?
These are 16s.
There's 15s in there too, I think.
In which tray?
Same tray. Just keep looking. Why is there no sound? Oh, do I have to turn my thing on? Why is there no sound?
No sound yet? You can't hear me?
I can't hear what this guy's saying.
I can hear what you're saying, though.
Will you put this in?
All right. So here's what I want to do. Now, we do have a few people who have joined us. Now,
I don't have any sound right now.
Will you put these in? Michelle Cooney.
What?
Please.
I'll put them in a little bit. I have to do this web thing.
Can I be in it?
I don't care.
Can I be the writer on the board?
No, I'm not doing that yet. You mean the video I'm supposed to make?
Yes.
No, I'm not doing that yet. It's like a webinar or like a.
What is this for?
It's for I have to describe something. I can't hear this guy. I don't know. My sound's not working. I don't know why. Do I have to turn this on?
He's live.
I know. I don't. Oh, I have a message. Is he talking? How do I click? Oh, I lost my
We can't
message.
hear you, sir.
How do I find my messages?
Hey, Dan.
hey, how we
Oh,
doing?
wait. There we go. I have to use my overhead speakers. It's really loud.
Is that okay? So if you have earbuds, that helps.
Do you have headphones? Nope, I don't.
No.
I'm just gonna use it.
Hey, it's not a problem, anyways. So
I'm
just
leaving
going.
It's going. Just
Yeah.
kicking kids out.
He's on Skype.
Hi, Tanner.
So hey, have you used Google Hangouts before?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but not much. We used it for a fantasy football draft one time, and that was about it.
Hey, no, that's the perfect way to do it. Well, hey, man, I was just going on. I appreciate you being here. Just know that we're going to talk about a few things, and you're good to go from here on out. Okay. So what we'll do is I'll just kind of go through a few things and ask you some questions kind of along the way, and I'm aiming this at just whoever's watching at the time, and also for whoever's going to be watching as a video afterwards. So, like I said, you're being here. You're good to go. So, now you're teaching chemistry, right?
Yep, chemistry and physical science.
Okay, good. That's what I used to teach. So I can't believe you found one of my really old videos.
That is yours.
That was mine. That was a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I just cringe. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many things I would have done differently about that if I was doing it now. So, but hey, let me just give you a quick rundown through Google Hangouts. If you go over on the left-hand side,
okay,
you get like a bunch of bars that pop up. Do you see the one that's like a speech bubble, but it's blue and it says chat?
Yeah, I see that. I just opened it.
Okay, you got that open? Okay, good, because I'm going to ask a few questions along the way, and you can just kind of put your stuff in there. The other stuff we're not really gonna mess around with.
I know, because I've used Skype, and like screen share is kind of a cool one to use with if you're trying to show like people things, but probably not the best for this. Just looking at more things, but okay, yeah, you go ahead though. Sorry.
Okay, no, we're fine. And you found along the top, like let's say you've got really loud students in your classroom or something like that, and you want to mute things, if you go
Yeah.
along the top of your screen, you get like a microphone icon that pops up, and you get the camera icon and stuff. So
Yeah.
you can hit the mute microphone, and just like that. So now I can see you. You can hopefully hear me, but if you've got something going on in the background, you'll be just fine. I find that like if I have to type an email or something while I'm listening, if don't have it muted, everybody can hear like the me banging on my keys.
They know you're off task.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't call it off task. I just call it multitasking. So
Task switching, I think, is the official term now.
good. So, but hey, yeah, earbuds help, especially if we've got a lot of people. It seems like if there's like really loud speakers, sometimes we get an echo. It's fine with you right now, but we'll see if anybody else comes in, and then we'll go from there. But hey, that's about it. So here's what I'm going to do. Now, have you used Snagit at all?
I've been using Screenshot-O-Matic.
Okay.
I tried to use the Snagit, like the one that the license code you guys sent out, but because I think my Mac it wasn't compatible with my Mac, the version of the operating system I had for some reason.
Oh,
so when
really?
I tried to run it, it didn't work, and I couldn't find the older version, so I haven't tried it yet. I was going to install it on my school computer, but I just didn't get around to it. So I've been using Screencast-O-Matic.
Okay, as long as you've got something that works just fine. Here's what I'm going to do for all the people that are going to be watching this later on. I'm going to share my screen and kind of show how to do or just use Snagit. So let me set that up here. Are you seeing my screen now?
It froze, but oh, there it goes. Yep.
Okay, so you seen the 21 thing, the Moodle course?
Yep.
Okay, so if you get Snagit up and running, now this is the newer version, so that wouldn't be what you see, and I think a lot of people who download it might see something slightly different. The idea is whenever you want to capture something, whether it's just a picture that's on your screen or you want to do video, you hit the red button and then you get the crosshairs. Now, are you seeing the crosshairs in the highlighted area?
Yep.
Okay. So all you have to do is just highlight the area that you want to capture,
Mm-hmm.
and then it gives you the option. You can either do a picture, or you can do the video. Now with Screencast-O-Matic, it works the same way with the video. But if you want to take a screenshot, just like a picture, and annotate it, you click on this, and then it comes up, and this is your I don't even know what they call it, but this is where you can do all the editing. So if I wanted to take something and then add an arrow to it, I just go over here in the tools and just draw my arrow. Or if I want to do the little speech bubbles or other things like that, then I can do all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you using when you have to do screenshots?
I'm just using the built-in Mac Command-Shift-3, doing the screenshot that way, and then I usually, if I need to edit it, I just open it in Paintbrush, and then I use that to draw on it and doodle on it.
Perfect. Okay, that works too. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people that have been struggling with trying to figure out how to do how to do Snagit and things like that. So let me unshare my screen. That's not it. Okay, so we're good to go. All right. Well, hey, I got to tell you, I really enjoy reading your stuff. It's nice to talk to other chemistry people and kind of see what's going on in the classroom and stuff like that. Now, let's see. So for thing one, it was talking about the blended classroom. So you get some other people that are doing like what's called flipped learning or the flipped classroom and things like that. And that's something I started doing a lot when I was in my classroom, but I've kind of gotten a little sick of it, just because there's a lot of people who are out there and they're like, hey, buy this and you'll have flipped your classroom. So you and me, we're just going to have a little conversation. In your opinion, and oh, by the way, for those of you who are watching this later, you're going to need to write down your answers for this and post that. So this is big question number one. What would you say computers can do better than we can as teachers?
Ease of repetitiveness, I guess. I mean, for a student on a computer, you're watching a video of a practice problem and you just miss one step or you just want to go back 10 seconds. It's a lot easier, I think, to do that on a recording than for the teacher, for us to go through the whole thing over again. So if a student, just needs a little bit more repetition, it's easier for them to do that. Or if they're absent that day, I mean, for me, that's the biggest thing. This tool is so useful because if a kid's at home, they're sick, they miss, the 15, 20 minutes you're doing practice problems, they can just get online from home and look at it that way if they're willing to. So I really like that. And then pacing, I think, is another big piece that I always come up, talking to Mrs. Irwin here in the building's a teacher who's real big on this. Just if they have the resources online, they can self-pace a little bit more. Helps you just kind of differentiate with the different learners you have in the classroom. So for me, I think that, that's the big piece of that draw for a lot of technology, I think. But the other one is collaboration. Kind of, I think it's easier for students to collaborate with each other with technology and kind of see how they go through that learning process. So it can be a little bit more student-centric than when maybe with us it's more teacher-centric. So
yeah, I think that those kind of things lend themselves very well to what we teach with science, with chemistry and physical science and things like that. There's a lot of that kind of step-by-step sort of thing, a lot of stuff that, hey, if you miss one thing, you're going to be in trouble tomorrow. Now, here, let's look at that from a different angle. What do we as teachers do better than a computer ever could?
Then computer by itself. So when you said a computer, I thought us with the computer, but by ourselves, I mean innovation, I guess. I mean just approaching the students, as students, because I think that's a real big important part of teaching is knowing your students and what how they're going to understand the material. So if you just give every student the same generic online course, I think it's not going to be as effective as having a teacher in the room who knows their students and knows how they're going to understand information and how they're going to learn the best, I guess. I mean, for me, really, the combination of the two is the best way to go, I think. It can maximize learning.
And that was like the perfect segue, because my next question, so like the first question being, and I shouldn't say computer, I should just say technology. What does technology do better than we can? And you really nailed it, I think, with the idea of making content accessible and rewindable and all of those other things.
The other thing that for science, now that you said more science specific, because we do a lot of modeling in science, and allowing kids to make models of the things they're observing, and then easily revisable models, so they can go back and revise their idea of what's happening when things are bonding or anything like that. I think that's something that technology can be really helpful with.
That's a perfect example there. So James, how you doing, man? I don't know if he's hearing us, but hey, so. And you gave the perfect segue there. Is I think that we need to really think about the intersection of those two questions. Like, okay, what does technology do really well? What do we as teachers do really well? And then find that intersection, because I think all too often when you talk about the flipped classroom or the blended classroom or other things, that people that don't get it have this idea that all you have to do is slap up a bunch of PowerPoint slides on a website and that's a blended classroom. Or the teacher sitting at the front of the room just talking at a class full of students for an hour, that's the best way you could do or have your traditional classroom. So like I said, I think you really nailed it with that idea of the intersection. And for those of you who are watching this after it's live, the next big question that I want you to write down is, what's the happy medium? When it comes to technology and when it comes to us in the classroom, what's that happy medium of what technology does really well, what we do really well, and how do we meet those? So thing number one was really about that. How can we start using that digital aspect in the classroom? So here's what I'm wondering. Now that you guys have made some of your own videos, based on what you've created and what you've seen from others, what kind of advice would you give somebody who's doing this for the first time? Like if you were giving advice to somebody on how to make a good screencast, what would you tell them?
So I haven't done the one for my classroom yet. I told my students today that I'm going to have to do it, and they're all pretty excited to watch it. But the one that I made for the other educators involved in this, I think just make sure at least know kind of where you're going with it before you start, so you don't have too many ums in there, I guess.
Yeah.
Just kind of have an outline of where you're going with it. And for me, thinking about because I'm going to do one on ionic compounds and how to rule of zero charge and stuff, I want to make sure I have examples laid out. And you know where you're going with it before you get started, because you don't want to ramble too much, but still don't be afraid, I guess, to make mistakes and be yourself, because I think the kids will be more prone to watch it and rewatch it if it's you, being personable, not an automated kind of computer-like thing, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think they want a robot. I think they want their teacher. They want to see. I mean, we make mistakes all the time in front of our classrooms, and we don't worry too much about it. So I don't think we should. There's just something about putting it on a video that freaks everybody out, where they think they have to be perfect. And when I was first starting my screencasting and everything, I spent hours making these videos, and it wasn't worth it, and it was way too rigid. Mm-hmm. So you've got two schools of thought there. You've got the school of thought where, hey, I'm just going to wing it, and the other one is I have this script and I'm going to say it word for word. I don't know what you guys did, but I used to just kind of put an outline where I'd have my content up, just like you said. You had those examples ready to go, but then I'd have that outline, and then I'd just kind of talk through it. So It was prepared, it was succinct, but it wasn't so strict that
it's not scripted. It's an outline, not a script that you have to follow, right? I mean, because even though this may get out to the wider web, you're making it for your students. So I mean, that's what your audience really. So even though other people might see it, it's not who.
Right.
Made for, I guess.
So James, how about you, man? What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's making a screencast for the first time? I'm wondering if he can hear us or not.
Doesn't seem like it.
Doesn't. Okay. So let me type in here. So you've told your students already that you're going to make this, and they're.
Well, because we did ionic compounds in class today, and I told them to look for it on Twitter pretty soon here.
Nice. Well, hey, let's kind of move on from there, because, like I said, for those of you who are watching this for the first time, so far I've asked a few questions. I've asked, okay, what does technology do better than we can as teachers? What do we do better than technology can? And then how do we find the happy medium? And then we've just been kind of talking a little bit about some advice for for screencasting and what works and what doesn't. James, can you hear me now?
I can.
All right. Hey, so what advice would you give somebody who's doing a screencast for the first time?
Let's see. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My sound was all messed up. I couldn't hear you guys. I finally just figured it out here. Screencast. First time around. I'd never done one until this class here. Probably the advice I would give to them, thing that I had the biggest problem with. I had to go back and redo it a few times. Was just talking at a nice, consistent pace, not talking too fast, and talking clearly, so they could kind of follow you. Especially if you had a screen, you were moving the cursor around on there, or something, pointing things out. Just not to go too fast. You could lose them really quick. Right.
And I think that also is important to talk about with students in the class, is just how to watch a screencast. The nice thing is that they can stop and pause and rewind and stuff like that, but I found that when I was first doing this with my students, they didn't get that. They were just kind of used to just watching things, and but when I started focusing on, hey, if I was going too fast, or if there was something that you didn't understand, then you need to go back and do over it. So we used to spend a lot of time modeling how to watch a screencast in class before I ever had them do that on their own.
Right.
But here, let's think a little bit about the application of thing number 2. Now, that was the content area tools, and I know a lot of people had some, well, there's some varied reaction on More and MLO and things like that. I think it's good to know that it's out there. I think we all have our own kind of go-to content sites. Now this may have to take a corner off of my man card for this one, but I'm finding that on Pinterest there's a lot of stuff out there, and I really shouldn't say this now that it's recorded, but there's a lot of teachers that are putting stuff on there. So I found that if I'm ever looking for ideas on something, Pinterest is a good place to go. But like I said, we all have our own content area sites and just kind of make them ours. What was interesting, though, was the idea of formative assessment and content assessment tools. Now, they talked about Testmos. What did you guys use for that?
I used Testmos, and I really liked that one. It was good for me because one of my personal growth or professional growth goals for the year was to use more formative assessments.
Good.
I used to use Data Director a lot, and I had it linked in or synced with CPS clickers, but we got rid of Data Director this year. So then, discovering Testmos, that was a really good plus because it gives you that great item analysis at the end of each quiz. So I'm definitely planning on using that a lot more frequently with the kids. But
good. That's a good one. James, how about you?
Yeah, I use Testmos also.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the item analysis at the end. You could, I just did a short little 5-question quiz thing on there to kind of demo it, but yeah, I can see where if you had 10, 20 questions on there, maybe you'd want that item analysis was nice, and it was really easy to put together too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here's something. Now, James, what do you teach?
Well, I'm a trained teacher. I taught for 7 years, was an administrator. Now I work at the juvenile home in Calhoun County.
That's right.
And
okay.
I help place kids back into school once they've served their time with us. So I'm not in a classroom. I work with kids in pairs or maybe individually on career exploration and goal setting and just talking about getting back to school and what's going to make them successful. So I'm not in front of 30 kids, every hour, every day, in a certain subject.
So
each kid looks a little bit different.
You're having to look at this from a different angle of how you could use these things. I won't go over it too much, but I think especially for the science classes, my favorite tool wasn't on here. It's something called Infused Learning. It's similar to Socrative. And Poll Everywhere. But what I really like about it is that it has a drawing feature.
You know what? That's funny that you say that because Mrs. Irwin, Sandra Irwin, I don't know if you know her, she just came back from a Connected Learning conference. I don't know, it was in Jackson a couple weeks ago.
Yep, that was ours.
And she mentioned Infused Learning. She's going to show us that at our a PD in 2 weeks or a week.
It's just really slick. I mean, it still has that item analysis and everything. But since it's web-based, it works really well for a kind of like a bring-your-own-device sort of scenario where some kids may have a cell phone, others might have a tablet, some might have a laptop, things like that. But I'll tell you that the ability for kids to draw on that is
Yeah.
is really cool.
That'd be great for the modeling.
So here's the next big question. So you guys, for you, both of you who are here, I'm going to have you just type your answer in the group chat. But for everybody else who's watching this later, here's what I want to know. We're talking about formative assessment. Give me one way you can know if your kids really get it. Whether that's something that you use in class or just something that you are one of the strategies that you use. What do you do to figure out if kids really understand what it is you're teaching?
You want us to say it too, or just type it?
Go ahead and type it first. So while you guys are finishing up, and for those of you who are going to watch this later on, I think it's really important not for us to get caught up in the tools themselves, because I don't know, someday something's going to come along that's better than Infused Learning, or maybe Testmos doesn't work in certain classrooms or other things like that. But I think it's really important that we kind of have our strategies down for what works in the classroom just in general. So thinking about that, let's not talk about the Testmos. Could you guys, or not talk about the tools themselves? Could you guys kind of explain what it is you wrote down just really briefly for everybody else who's going to be watching this?
Okay. So this year and this whole year, one thing our new principal is really big on is a daily learning goal. So in the past, I've always broken units down into I can statements that are derived from the HISSEs, or whatever you want to call them, you know, our standards that we're supposed to be teaching. So I try to put that in student-friendly language as I can statements that the students get every unit. But this year I've actually broken those down further into daily learning targets or learning goals that are on the board at the beginning of each class. So students is very explicit in terms of what they should be knowing or what they should be learning that day. And then I try to, and I say try because it doesn't always happen, but have an exit slip question that pertains to the learning goal. And hopefully if they can answer the exit slip and, you know, they themselves say, I learned, you know, I met that learning goal today. And even if they haven't, you know, they say, I didn't meet this, I can't do this question, at least they know where they're at, and then I get a pretty good idea of where they're at with that as well.
That's perfect. That's a great example. James, how about you?
Well, I really, a lot of times in my position now, I have a lot of conversations with the kids. You know, just kind of questioning and kind of checking in with them and seeing kind of where they're at. It's a little bit different situation than being in an academic classroom. You know, like I said, with 30 kids in there. But if I were in a classroom, you know, I would want to. I mean, we would establish what we were going to learn that day. You know, goals, you know, and that kind of thing. And then I would use, I said, you know, using like a Testmos kind of tool, or even just the old-fashioned way, just kind of polling people in the classroom verbally. just along the way, just kind of probing in there and seeing if they've got, if they're picking up what we're working on here. And
so in your situation now, when you're working more along kind of one-on-one or in small groups or other things like that, what are some of the techniques that you are using to kind of try to get into their heads, try to kind of see what they're thinking?
Well, I have a lot of conversations with them just to, they come in. I don't know them from anybody else when they come in the door to us. It's really relationship building kind of thing, a lot of it. So I find out, what their family situation is like. I can find out from records and things like that why they're there, what they've done. It gives me a lot of clues to some of the issues they've overcome or are working on, and those kind of things I kind of use to tailor the conversation to them, and it's kind of like they say, kind of make it real with them.
I'll tell you,
like I said,
I think that regardless of whatever situation we're in, I think the big idea behind using technology in the classroom is to have a lot more of those kind of one-on-one conversations. I think at least one of the things that I've found before I started getting into the stuff is when it's me against 32 of my students, it's very easy for me to just kind of stay at the front of my classroom and then just talk at them, and just if they're nodding their heads, then I was happy because I think, okay, well, they're getting it. When really what I found was that it wasn't until I was having those kind of one-on-one conversations that I was realizing what they really understood and what they didn't, and it was actually kind of scary to see how little they actually understood compared to what I thought they understood. But when I could have those one-on-one conversations, it was a lot easier, it was a lot quicker for me to be able to kind of get in there, help them kind of get through any of those misconceptions or help them wherever they're stuck. And that's when I started enjoying it a lot more, is by having certain things on the technology side, allowing me to have more time to be one-on-one with my kids. So here's the last thing that I want to do here. It's on thing number 3, the online video and audio resources. And you guys went and you found some things that are on there. It's been really fun to see over the past 5-6 years, just the explosion of content that's online. There's a lot of teachers out there who are making stuff and sharing it. But here's where it gets interesting. There's a battle, and kind of my situation is I work with all the districts in Jackson and Hillsdale County, so every building is different, every district's different. When I bring up YouTube, it's really interesting to see what the reaction is. Now, James, you're in a different situation on things, but I'd love to hear what you guys are seeing in your districts. How is the idea of letting students access YouTube during school, how's that received?
Poorly, I'd say. I think the students don't have access. I think they don't have access to YouTube if they can't get on it from their accounts. So obviously with all the cell phones and stuff, they can get on it on their phones if they want to. The teachers, we have access to YouTube. Personally, there is some. I mean, there's the content isn't as filtered as you would probably like for a public school, but I think there is a lot of good things on there, especially from a science perspective. Especially, you can get a lot of good videos of demonstrations on YouTube. Okay, there's some things that you couldn't do in the classroom, either because you don't have the equipment or the materials, or just that you don't have time for necessarily.
You can't put cesium and water in your classroom?
No, they don't. That doesn't. I wish. I always show them that video of the alkali metals in water, and they always say, "Where can we get some cesium?" And I said, "Well, we can't. We have some sodium in the back, I think, but nothing like that." Or there's one really cool one. We do gas laws, and you can find one of a tanker. They sealed it before it cooled off, and it just crushes the tanker.
Oh, nice.
Or like with a 55-gallon drum, it's kind of like the can crush you do, but you can do it with the 55-gallon drum. There's one on there. So like I said, some of them are just extra supplementary things that really I think the kids enjoy. So I use it a lot, and then of course every now and then you get that awkward moment where there's an ad or some other video in the top corner, and it's like they're like, "Oh, click on that one with the woman in a bikini," but
Yeah. Don't. It's amazing how that works. So maybe what I need to do is show you guys quiet tubes sometimes. Quiet tubes are really cool. It's a Chrome extension. But what it does is you pull up your YouTube video and then you click the quiet tube button and all it shows is the video. Everything else around, like all the ads and other things that
the comment section,
interesting, all those get blocked out. So
that'd be really cool. Yeah.
But yeah, it's very interesting because there's a lot of crap on YouTube, but there's also a lot of really good stuff. And it's amazing. I mean, you've got people that are making these videos, these high-quality content videos, and that's their job. I mean, we could talk about all the science stuff that's on there. There's just tons and tons of things. But I think it's going to be really important as this kind of stuff becomes more and more common to figure out how to convince administrators that the good outweighs the bad, but also to convince students to use this the right way rather than going off and getting into stuff that gets us in trouble. So
yeah, that's a big conversation I'm having because we got a new principal, and I mean, right now our district, the policy is no cell phones in the classroom, and our new principal is kind of a little more lenient on that. He says, if you have an activity plan, just let me know, and the kids can have their phones out. And I mean, for me, it really just needs to become a policy in the classroom. You can have your phones, but just like any other off-task thing, if you're on it when we're talking or having a discussion, when and where you need to learn these rules, these kind of societal norms of respect and things. So for me, I think with technology and being able really to fully utilize it, I mean, those phones are just part of what you need to deal with. So, I mean, in teaching the kids how they behave with their phone I think is just as important, or it's a skill that they need with technology.
Right, and I think that's one of the most important things that we can do, because I know a lot of teachers, the whole idea of students using their own cell phones, they're peeing down their leg because they're so scared. But you just think about all that it opens up if it's used the right way. But I really think the conversation has to be first, just like what you mentioned, is these are the norms, this is what's expected, this is how you do this in the real world. And then kind of set the stage there. I know it was something that I used a lot in my classroom. At first I failed miserably just because I didn't set up those norms, but once we kind of set up the expectations, it helped a lot. Now, do you know who Gary Abood is?
No.
He's a physics and chemistry teacher out in the Detroit area, and he's done a lot with bring your own device and all of that stuff, and kind of talking a lot about the culture of the classroom and the expectations. We'll talk about that another time, but yeah, Gary is just a great example of teachers that have kind of set up a situation where it's okay to bring in cell phones and do all sorts of things. And I'll tell you, you walk into that classroom and you see all of the good ways that it could be used, and that's really exciting.
I think what a lot of teachers shy away from is just it is an extra classroom management thing, because not only you have to see what they're doing and what they're keeping them on task and things like that, because it's not as visible. I mean, normally if a student's talking, they're talking or not working on their activity or whatever, but with their phone, if they can have it out, it's a lot more difficult to kind of see what they're doing exactly. It's kind of a faith-based. You have to trust that they're gonna do what they're supposed to be doing.
That's a great point there. So here's kind of one of my last questions. We've been talking about all of these online video and audio resources. We've been talking a little bit about the whole idea of students using their own devices, and also the idea that if districts are going to do this, they have to see some kind of reason for it. If you were talking to a principal or something like that and trying to share with them why it's so important that they have access to these digital resources, what would you tell them?
That's tricky. Well, I mean, for me, I mean, it's different. Like we said, differentiation. If you've created these resources, I will, if I make a video, I want my students to be able to access it anytime they want, even if that is in the classroom, because maybe they do need that extra review on ionic bonding. But also, I mean, digital citizenship, I guess you could say, that's part of it. That's always a part of it. But just knowing a big part of what I'm getting, in terms of 21st century education is it's not so much memorization, but application. So no one needs to memorize solubility rules anymore. It needs to memorize things like that. It's all about, how one accessing that information, how can you access it readily, and then how can you apply it. So I think if we get past, I guess you could say, depth of knowledge one, learning, I guess it's more about, and having the phones there, it's limitless information. It's unlimited. There's so much information they can get access to right away. It's just knowing how to filter that information and get out the good from the bad, and what is good information, then how can you use that information to deepen your learning, I guess, your understanding.
I'm really glad that you brought up the whole idea of depth of knowledge there, just because when I was in when I was in high school back in the mid-90s, the person who knew everything about chemistry was Mr. Kreiderman. The person who knew everything about biology was Mr. Schick. And Spanish was Miss Algier, and it was the teacher who was kind of that controller of all the knowledge. Now that whole idea of the depth of knowledge one, that's a Google search.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do we go beyond that being Googleable and be able to focus on those other deeper levels of knowledge? James, how about you? What would you say to somebody who's trying to understand or is trying to figure out if this is all worth it? What would be your case for why digital tools are so important?
Well, I think, like you said, it comes down to digital citizenship. I mean, the stuff is all out there. I mean, if the kids aren't using it at school, they're going to be using it at home, and we need to take advantage of that. There's some really powerful stuff, that we can bring into our classrooms here using this technology, and it really, I know at the juvenile home where I work, we have to. It's a big conversation with the kids. The last thing we want is, a student that's at the juvenile home, placed there by the courts, Facebooking somebody outside the building or tweeting somebody outside the building because they're on an iPad or something that's unsupervised, that kind of thing. And it really, they want to, the students, I mean, they want to use this technology. I mean, they'll even go, against the rules that will give them even further penalties than being incarcerated in some cases, that will get them in trouble in that in order to use these tools. And it's just it's something that we need to teach them, the right way to use it. We need to put a little trust into them and allow them to use it, but you still have to be looking over their shoulder too, make sure they are using it correctly.
Well, I think you bring up a great point there with how powerful this is. That, like you said, kids are willing to break the rules in your situation just to get access to that kind of stuff. Well, I want to wrap things up here, and you guys, thank you so much for being part of this. I've really enjoyed the conversations that we've had. The question that I have now is, so now what? We've been talking about all of this stuff. You guys have been working for the past few weeks and done an awesome job with learning all these new tools. I think the trick with 21 Things to not getting overwhelmed is to not try to become an expert in all of them, but just to pick one idea or one tool and focus on that. So I'm not really looking for an answer from you two on this, but just kind of think of, okay, so now what? With all that we've talked about, with all that we've learned over the past few weeks, what's one thing that I could start kind of trying to implement in my classroom or trying to do? So with that, I am going to stop this broadcast. I'm going to have you guys stay on after I finish up just to go over a few things. But for those of you who are watching this, taped or recorded, remember you have some questions you need to answer for us. So the big questions are, first, what does a computer or what does technology do better than we do? What do we do better than technology? And then what's the happy medium? What's the combination of those two things? After that, the next big question is thinking of formative assessment. How do you know if your students really get it? Do you have any strategies, any tips, tricks? What is it that you do to know if your students understand? And then the last big question that I'll have you guys answer is, why digital? What is it about digital content that makes it so powerful in the classroom? So let me know if you have any questions, and we'll talk more.